All right, we are opened up to the next clean page in our math notebooks. And our title today, let me switch my camera. I forgot that I had this all set up. Okay, this one. Come on. There we go. It was what I used for my microphone also has a camera on it, so it was showing that camera. That's funny. Yes. Okay. At the top of today's notes, we're writing 7.2, find common denominators. So 7.2, find common denominators. And today's date, which is 1/11/21, because it's 2021. Thank you for giving me a thumbs up, Michael, to let me know you're ready to move on. And you guys did a great job with that during our distance learning, too. I really appreciated that. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. 7.2, find common denominators. Thank you. So 5th grade, when you have your title and date written down, I'd like you to turn and whisper to the person next to you, what is a denominator? Turn and talk. What's a denominator? Three, 2, 1, 0. All right, so 5th grade, if I put this fraction up, 4/6, I want you to raise your hand if you know which of the numbers is the denominator. On the count of 3, let's say it together. Which number is the denominator? 1, 2, 3? 6. The 6 is our denominator. I'm going to abbreviate it because I don't have room. What do we call this top number then? Who knows? Numerator. Now, 5th grade, how can you easily remember that the bottom one is the denominator? Does anyone have a trick for remembering? Does anyone have a trick for remembering? Michael?
D is for down.
Yes. Denominator, it has that D. It starts with a D. That's also is what down starts with. So denominator, down. It is the number on the bottom. So 5th grade, if we're finding common denominators, raise your hand. What do you think that means? What do you think that means? Mackenzie?
Like, how is common fractions like 1/2 and like 3/4? Common denominator is like a common, like 2, 4, 6, right?
Okay.
As a number up for the bottom.
Okay. What do you think, Drew?
Kind of just a guess, but finding the simplest denominator number.
Kind of. I'm going to tell you that this involves more than one fraction. So if we're finding common denominators for more than one fraction, what do you think? Will?
Finding the equivalent fractions.
Finding equivalent fractions is part of it. And we have to make sure what? Yosef? That's okay. Michael?
Is it where we have like 4 each, and then to the side of it we have 1/2?
You guys are getting really close. And so you're going to see when we get to it. You're going to see. Okay. So, steps. We have some steps. Now remember, 5th grade, taking good notes, especially during fractions, is very important so that you can have these next to you while you do your homework. No, you can use one line. I just like to make it big. You know that. What? So it's easier to see, exactly. Awesome. All right, let's turn off the side chatter, please. Are you guys ready for the first step? Are we ready for the first step?
Yeah.
Cool. I don't want to have to remind people about talking on our first day back. That would be sad. Okay, first step. List multiples of both denominators. And don't worry if you're like, what on earth are you talking about, Missy? I'm about to tell you. So list multiples of both denominators. So like I said, 5th grade, we need to find common denominators when we have multiple fractions. So for an example, you guys keep writing. Give me a thumbs up when you have this written down, and then I'm going to talk a little bit. Awesome. Kind of give you an example of what we're talking about here. Awesome. Next step. Thank you for letting me know you're ready to move on. Thank you for letting me know you're ready to move on. Make sure when you're done that you are not disrupting the people around you, even if they're done. Thank you. So 5th grade, we have to find common denominators when we are adding or subtracting fractions. So if I have, for example, I have 1/2 and 2/3, and I want to add them. Right now, I cannot add them because if we look at their denominators, do they have the same denominator? No. When you add and subtract fractions, you can't add or subtract them until they have the same denominator. So when I say we are finding common denominators, we are finding ways to rewrite our fractions that we might be adding to where they have the same denominator, but we're not changing the value. Remember how we've talked about equivalent fractions? How like 1/2 can be written as 3/6 or 4/8. We're going to be practicing finding equivalent fractions. So remember, that's another way of writing a fraction with different numbers, but it doesn't change the value, so that we can add and subtract our fractions easily. When they don't have the same denominator, we can't add or subtract them. So when we have two fractions, our first step is to list multiples of both denominators. Now I want you to turn and talk to the person next to you. What are multiples? Turn and talk. What are multiples? 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, 5th grade. Who can tell me what a multiple is? What is a multiple? What is it, Addie?
A multiple is it's a number you can multiply that number by.
Yes, it is a number that, so when you think of a multiple, think of multiplying. It is a number that you can get by multiplying the number you're starting with. So for example, if we're listing multiples of both denominators, so multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We can multiply 2 by different numbers to get 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, right? So, turn and talk to the person next to you. What are some multiples of 3? Turn and talk. 3, 2, 1, 0. Say them with me as I write them. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. We're going to stop there. Now, there are lots of multiples, right, for 2 and 3? Now, fifth grade, if we're finding, okay, so first step, listing multiples of both denominators. On my example, which you don't need to write down yet, did I list multiples for both denominators? I did. I listed numbers we can multiply 2 into, and I listed numbers that we can multiply 3 into. My second step then is to circle the first multiple that both numbers have in common. So go ahead, first write that down. There's a term we use for this, and we'll talk about it in just a moment. So circle the first. And notice I put a box around the word first. Because oftentimes when you're listing multiples of your two denominators, they will have more than one number in common. But we want to circle the first multiple that both numbers have in common. Give me a thumbs up when you have number 2 written down. Step 2. Perfect. Thank you for showing me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on. So step 2 is to circle the first multiple that both numbers have in common. Nice work, fifth grade. I'll give you another moment or so to finish up step 2. A few people finishing up. You circle the first multiple that both numbers have in common. So fifth grade, if we look at my example here, I listed the multiples for the 2 and 1/2 and the 3 and 2/3. What is the first multiple that both the 2 and the 3 have in common? In another way I could say the first multiple, I could say the smallest multiple that they have in common. Raise your hand when you see it. So you'd want to start at the top of the multiple list for both numbers and go down until you see a number they both have in common, the smallest number that they both have in common. I want you to whisper the common multiple to the person next to you. On the count of 3, I want you to say the common multiple out loud with me. 1, 2, 3. 6. So when we look, okay, so the first multiple for 2 is 2. Well, 3 doesn't have 2 as a multiple. The second one is 4. 3 does not have 4 as a multiple. 2 has 6 as a multiple. Well, I look at 3, 3, 6. And are there any smaller numbers that they have in common? No. So when it says find the first multiple, that also means the smallest. So what I'd like you to do is near where you put first, also write the word smallest. So when they say circle the first multiple, that means circle the smallest that they have in common. Sometimes I know I'll think I've written all the multiples for a number, but then I'll realize, oh my gosh, 12 is also a multiple. And maybe I put it out of order. So what's first in my list may not be the smallest. So when they say circle the first multiple, they mean circle the smallest multiple they have in common. Now, what is one number that goes into Oh, never mind. We're not getting to that yet. So circle the first multiple that both numbers have in common. Does that make sense? You're finding the smallest number they have in common. Okay. Then we have step 3. Or actually, this is the note I think some of you wanted to say. This number is the least common denominator, the LCD. So that smallest multiple, that number they have in common, that is the smallest, we call that the least common denominator. That is the smallest or least common number that they have in common. That could be their denominator. This can be abbreviated as the LCD. So that least common denominator. It's the smallest number they have in common that can be both of their denominators. So this number is the least common denominator, or the LCD. So thank you, Will. So if you hear me say, okay, 5th grade, our first step is to find the LCD, I'm saying let's find that least common denominator. And that's just, we find that by just doing these 2 steps, listing the multiples and circling the smallest one they have in common. That's what it means to find the least common denominator, the LCD. If I ever say, okay, let's find the LCD, you're just completing these first 2 steps. So we're going to practice, or we're going to have an example after this one too. Because once we find the common denominator, there's a step we have to take in order, thank you, Layla, to write that equivalent fraction with that new denominator. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So I want to know, after you get this note down under 2, are there any questions we have right now? Are there any questions we have right now? Any at all? Any questions at all? Is this making sense so far? Yes. Listing the multiples, finding the smallest one they have in common.
Yes, no.
Kind of. I mean, it might be a little new. And so you might be saying, well, Missy, when you explain it, yes, makes sense, but I'm not sure yet. That's okay. But so far it's making sense. No questions. Okay. So, when we complete step 1 and 2, we're finding the least common denominator, the smallest number they have in common. So then, we have an example here. Let's write this example down. I'm going to scoot this up a little bit. So, our example, we have 2/9 and 5/6. Write down everything I've written down. So, you'll notice I kind of have a deconstructed kind of chart to the right that has a 9 and a 6. This is where we're going to be listing those multiples here in a moment. So I just want you to write down for now, example, 2/9 and 5/6, and then set up the area where we're going to be writing those multiples. That's what I did there. Now, as we do this more, and some of you may be feeling this way already, as you will feel comfortable kind of going through multiples in your head. But I want us to get into the practice of writing it down, because sometimes you're going to get a weird denominator. Like you could get, let's say, 27 as a denominator. And if you need to find multiples of 27, I don't know about you, but I want to keep track of it on my paper. So I want us to get into the habit of writing down our multiples, but just know as you move forward, if you have like 1/2 and 2/3, a 2 and a 3, you feel comfortable doing that in your head, you can. So you don't have to. You can do it on our paper. So 2/9 and 5/6. A few people finishing up getting that chart written down. Kind of chart. Kind of like a chart. Once you have these written down, I want you to follow step 1 and 2 for these 2 denominators. This is where you're listing your multiples for each. So you should list as many multiples as it takes for you to get to the end of that line. So go ahead, complete steps 1 and 2. List multiples of both denominators, then circle the first or smallest multiple that both numbers have in common. Give me a thumbs up when you've completed those 2 steps. I'm going to remind you that in your planner, you have a multiplication table. If you are someone who has a really tough time figuring out multiples in your head, for homework, for this step, you can pull up that multiplication table and look to see what your multiples of 9 and 6 are, for example, for this one. So, okay. A few people, they finished their list, now they're looking for that smallest number they have in common, that least common denominator, LCD. Okay. Are we ready to look at this together? Okay. I didn't hear any no's, so I'm going to assume it's yes. Okay. So I'm going to start, I'll do it in blue, listing multiples of 9. So I have 9, 18, what's the next one? 27, and 54. I'm going to stop at 54. So I have 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, and 54. Now I'm going to list multiples of 6. So that'd be 6, 12, 18, 24, 36. I'm going to stop there. Now 5th grade, I've listed, let me move this up so you can see it better. I've listed my multiples for both numbers. So now, if I follow step 2, it says circle the first, or that also means smallest, multiple that both numbers have in common. So now I'm going to look at both of these. I'm going to think, okay, what's the smallest number that 9 and 6 have in common? Well, 9 and 6. Well, they don't have those in common. Then 9 has 18. Does 6 have 18? Yes. Is that the smallest number they have in common? Yes. I'm going to circle it. Make sure you circled them. If you didn't circle them, I'd like you to. So 5th grade, what is my LCD for 2 9ths and 5 6? It's 18. 18. I see what you're trying to do there, Will. So for the 9 and the 6, my LCD is 18. Then, step 3, we're going to talk about what this means. Find equivalent fractions with the LCD. So just get that written down. Give me a thumbs up when you have it written down. And I'll tell you what exactly that means. What on earth, Miss E, do you mean by finding equivalent fractions with LCD? So get step 3 written down. And you'll notice I put a box around the word equivalent. Thank you to those of you who are waiting patiently for the rest of your classmates to get done. Thank you for letting me know quietly that you are ready to move on. So, New people finishing last step. All right, is there anyone who needs more time? Okay, so what it means, find equivalent fractions with the least common denominator. We are now going to convert 2/9 and 5/6 into two fractions that have 18 as the denominator. So we have to find a common multiple so that we know what fraction to convert them both into. Like I said, when we add and subtract, our fractions need to have the same denominator. By finding a multiple they have in common, we know how to convert them. So when we convert them, we're going to just kind of set it up right now. I'd like you to write this out. And notice the space I left between 2/9 and then equals something over 18. And the space I left between 5/6 equals something over 18. I'll put my hand here because it seems to brighten up on the smartboard when I do that. So this is how we set it up. So we write both of our original fractions, we leave some space, and we put equals, and then we take that LCD, that least common denominator, and we make that the denominator of a new fraction. Now, we don't know what the numerator is going to be yet for either of these, but I'm going to show you how we convert them. So the whole point of finding the common denominator, yep, go ahead and write it down. The whole point of finding the common denominator is so that you can convert your fraction into a new fraction with that denominator without changing the value. We're not going to just say, oh, 2/9 is the same as 1/18. It's not at all. So we want to make sure we are converting it properly so we don't change the value of the fraction. Some of you might already have an idea of how we're going to do that. That's awesome. I will officially show you, though, when we all get this written down. I'm going to get out my red pen. Actually, I'm going to get out my pink pen. Okay. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. Give me a thumbs up when you are ready, because I don't want to actually move on until everyone's ready. I want to show you exactly how we do this. Perfect. Thank you for giving me those thumbs up. Is there anyone who's still writing? Anyone who needs more time? Okay, look up at the smartboard. Do a little mask check. Some people need to either pull up their mask or pull down their mask. It needs to cover your nose and your chin. Okay, so 5th grade. Once we've set it up, so for example, 2/9, I wrote my original fraction, left some space, equals something over, and I put my LCD as the new denominator. What we need to do is think, 9 times what equals 18? 9 times what equals 18? Put it on your hand. 9 times what equals 18? All right, 9 times 2. So what I'm writing in the space by the 9 is times 2. Now, 5th grade, can I just multiply the denominator by 2?
No.
What also then needs to be multiplied by 2? Raise your hand. What needs to be multiplied by 2? Okay, let's say it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Numerator.
Numerator. So, 5th grade, to get my new fraction with 18 as the denominator, 9 times 2 equals 18. 2 times 2 equals 4. So 2/9 has the same value as 4/18. We just changed it into 4/18 so it has a common denominator with our next fraction. So what I'd like you to do, I want you to try and complete those steps for our other fraction here. Remember, I thought about the denominator first. So I did 9 times what equals 18, so then I knew what to multiply the denominator and the numerator by. I'd like you to do the same thing for 5/6 and write the new numerator on top. Give me a thumbs up when you have done that or you have attempted it. Whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator, and vice versa. If you were to do something to the numerator, you'd have to do it to the denominator. No, one get too many notes. That way, if you forget on the homework, you can go back and write. Awesome, good grade. Does anyone need more time? Okay, go ahead, Cindy. Perfect. Okay. Now, fifth grade. On the count of three, I would like you to show me on your hand 6 times what equals 18. So on the count of three, show me on your hand. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 6 times 3 equals 18. So whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 6 times 3 gets me 18. 5 times 3 gets me 15. So fifth grade, our new fractions with a common denominator. They both have 18 as their denominator. We have 4 18ths and 15 18ths. What questions do you have right now? What questions do you have right now? Now, I'd like your eyes on me, over here, eyes on me. Remember my note before we started fractions?
Yes.
Can you see how if you were to rush through this, you could get the wrong denominator and therefore convert them into the wrong fractions?
Yeah.
So, it is important with fractions. Speed is not the most important factor here. You want to get there? Fractions, factors. Accuracy. Taking your time, making sure you're doing it right. That is what is the biggest factor here, okay? So, does anyone have any questions right now? I'm going to have you practice the skill. So, we are going to do, I think I have 2 sets at the bottom. So we are going to do some practice.
Wait, so we're not going to have homework today?
Yes, you'll have homework, but you're gonna have practice problems in here, in your notebook. Guys, you always have homework. Come on. I give you work time. So practice, find common denominators, then find equivalent fractions. So all those steps, 1 through 3, that's what you're going to be doing with these fractions I show you. So find common denominators. You can even abbreviate that to find LCDs, find the least common denominators, then find equivalent fractions. Now, fifth grade, let's say you find a common denominator, and it's a true common denominator, but it's not the smallest one. That would technically still work. However, when we correct homework, I will always be showing you the results with the least or smallest common denominator. So that's why you want to make sure you're taking your time to find the smallest one. So for practice, we're finding the least common denominator. Then we're finding the equivalent fraction. So exactly what we just did, 1 through 3. And you will be completing those steps 1 through 3. Oh yeah, there's 3 of them. With, these 3 pairs of fractions. So this little symbol, that's an and. You guys know I do my ands that way. So for number 1, we have 3/4 and 1/3. For number 2, we have 2/5 and 1/6. For number 3, we have 3/8 and 1/2. So you're just going to complete those 3 steps for each of these 3 problems. You'll list the multiples of both denominators, find the smallest one they have in common, then you are going to write the equivalent fraction with that new denominator. You can go ahead and get started when you are ready. When you are done, give me a thumbs up so I know, and then you can quietly read, write, or draw at your desk. You shouldn't be talking though because people are concentrating. go ahead. Number 1 is 3/4 and 1/3. Number 2 is 2/5 and 1/6. Number 3 is 3/8 and 1/2. So number 2. If you do it like that, yeah, you can still do that. Like you have to tell your mind kind of go there. So you're not in 5th grade, when you list those multiples, you can make that kind of box that goes left to right like we did on our notebook. Or if you wanted to, you remember on my sticky note, I listed them underneath the denominators. You could do that as well. So it's up to you. I showed you 2 different ways of listing your denominator or your multiples. You can list them left to right or up and down. It is up to you what feels best to you. Make sure you're taking your time when you're listing them so you don't miss one. Let me know if you have any questions. Now is your time to ask those questions. Okay, good. Maybe another moment or so. Some of you are kind of looking at number 3 like, this one's a little different from other ones we've had, and that's okay. That's why I picked it. I'll give you another moment. And if you're still on number 1 or 2, that's completely okay. I love that you guys are taking the time to do it right. You aren't going too fast. You're taking your time, finding that LCD, and writing your equivalent fractions. Remember, when you're done, you can quietly be reading, writing, or drawing at your desk. Okay, thank you to those of you who are done and are following my directions and not talking to the people around you. You're keeping your voice off and you're working on something quietly. I appreciate it, and the people around you appreciate it. Thank you very much. Ready to rock? Ready to rock? Okay, 5th grade. I know some of you are still working on 2 or 3. We are going to look at this together though. So if you have a book out, I would like you to put it to the side, close it up, put it to the side. If you're writing or drawing, I would also like you to put that to the side. Yes. Oh, okay. And I'd like you to follow along with me. So if you've already finished all of them, you're just checking your work. If you did not finish all of them, you should be working with me, writing it down with me, because remember, these are still notes. Examples, I don't know about you guys, but examples for me that have been completed correctly are the best way for me to look back at my notes and remember what I've done. So let's get started. I'm going to pick a lighter blue. Okay. So our first step is always to list the multiples of our denominators. So for number 1, our denominators are 4 and 3. So I'm going to make a little chart for my 4 and my 3. Now, I prefer to do it this way. However, some of you may have just listed them down underneath both denominators. That's totally fine. Go ahead, Will. Almost. Thank you, Will. So then I'm going to list my multiples. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. That should be enough. Then I'm going to list my multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So that's step 1, list the multiples of both. Then I'm supposed to circle the first, that means smallest, multiple that they both have in common. So if I'm looking, 4 and 3, no. 8 and 6, no. 9, no. 12. How many of you got 12 as your LCD for number 1? Awesome. Now, you might be looking and thinking, oh, darn it, I picked a different number. Remember, this still technically works. It's just that I'm going to get different equivalent fractions than you. So 12 is my least common denominator. So I found my LCD. So now I'm going to set it up so that I can convert them into their new fractions. So I'm going to write the original fraction. So 3/4, leave a space, equals something over my LCD, which is 12. All right. So then I think 4 times what equals 12? Show me on your hand. 4 times what equals 12? 4 times 3. So times 3. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So 4 times 3. So then I do 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Am I done? No, I have 2 fractions up here. So if you only did 3/4, you still need to do 1/3. So then 1/3, same thing. 1/3, leave a space, equals something over my LCD, which is 12. I'll complete the same process. 3 times what equals 12? Show me on your hand. 3 times 4, exactly. Yeah, it is. 3 times 4 equals 12, so whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 1 times 4 is 4. So I got 9/12 and 4/12. So let's say you accidentally circled a different number that they both had in common. You just need to make sure that you multiplied by the correct number to get whatever denominator you have. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, same thing. I'm going to use a different blue so that you can tell which one is for number 2. All right, so my denominators are 5 and 6. So I'm going to make my little chart over here with the 5 and the 6. I'm going to list their multiples. I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I'm going to stop there. Then for 6, I have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to look, okay, what's the smallest number they have in common, smallest multiple, least common. Okay, I'm looking. 30. How many of you got 30 as the multiple they have in common? Nice. 30. Perfect. So then, again, I'm going to set up my fractions down below. Take the first fraction, 2/5. Leave a space, equals something over my LCD, which is 30. I'm going to go ahead and set up the second fraction too, so I don't forget. So then I have 1/6. Leave a space, equals something over 30. So then I'm going to come in. 5 times what equals 30? Show me on your hands. 5 times what equals 30? times 6. Exactly. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. And you might get sick of me saying that, but 5th grade, it is the truth, and I want you to remember it. So 5 times 6 equals 30. 2 times 6 equals 12. So 12 30ths is my first fraction. Then for my second one, 1/6, 6 times what equals 30? Show me on your hand. 6 times what equals 30? 5. Yes. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. Nice job. 6 times 5 is 30. 1 times 5 is 5. How many of you got 12 30ths and 5 30ths for number 2? Awesome. Okay. Oh, let me scoot that up. I didn't realize how dark it was up there. Okay. Last one. You guys are doing great. We're on our last one. So I'm going to set it up. My 2 denominators, 8 and 2. Set up my little chart. So I have 8, 16, 24. I'm going to stop there. Then I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Well, when I'm looking at this 5th grade, I notice the 8. Is that our smallest multiple for both of them?
Yeah.
It is. So, if I were to go and set this up right now, I'll just get them both set up. 3/8, leave a space, equals something over 8, and then 1/2 space equals something over 8. 8 times what equals 8?
1.
1. Oh, let me do it in green. Keep it consistent. So then whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So then, did I change that first fraction?
No.
No. Sometimes when you're looking at 2 fractions, you'll realize, hey, this 2 and that 8, their common multiple is 8. So technically, I can leave 3/8 alone. So if you didn't even set up 3/8 and you kept it 3/8, that's okay. However, I just want you to be in the practice of setting it up so that you don't actually make a mistake. Then, so 3/8, we can use 3/8. Then we have 1/2. 2 times what gets me 8, 5th grade? Show me on your hand. Show me on your hand. 4. 2 times 4 gets me 8. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. 1 times 4 is 4. So 3/8 and 4/8. All right, what I want you to do, close your eyes, or set your head down, or both. Close your eyes, set your head down. First, think about how you are feeling when it comes to listing multiples and finding the smallest number they have in common. Show me your level of understanding with that. Level of understanding with listing multiples and finding the smallest number they have in common. How are we feeling with that? 1 through 5, how are we feeling with that? Okay. Hands down. I want you to think about, once you've found that LCD, that least common denominator, that smallest multiple, and you have to write the equivalent fraction for it, show me your level of understanding for that. Show me your level of understanding for that. Our eyes should be closed. Okay. Hands down. Hands down. Hands down. Open your eyes. I'm going to tell you your homework for tonight. So have your workbook out and ready. Math workbook out and ready.
Are we still doing the volume 1 work?
Yes, still doing the volume 1. Good question, Drew.
I'm guessing it's page 365.
You are going to open up to page 381. I know you were close. 381. 381. You are going to circle on page 381. Voices should be off. Waiting for you. Thank you to those of you waiting patiently. I appreciate it. You are going to circle numbers 2 through 4. So 2, 3, and 4. Number 8. Number 14. And number 15. And I will say it again. Numbers 2 through 4. So that means 2, 3, and 4. Number 8. Number 14. And number 15. Have your notebook out and next to you with your notes open for you to look back at. Go ahead. Nice work today.